Saltar Solutions, and I'm here today on Focus Forward with an awesome guest. I am so excited to have Kathy Sparrow, award-winning author, writer, writing coach, and professor here with us today. And I'm going to ask Kathy this question. I cannot wait. Kathy, why do they call you the adventure coach?
Well, I believe that life is an adventure and that everything we do, whether it's, entering a relationship, writing a book, traveling, it all can be an adventure instead of being um, even changing things in our lives. Instead of looking at change as something to fear or avoid, it's like, wow, what can I discover about myself by diving into some change, whether it's changing our diet, writing a book, or going around the world.
So tell us about what, maybe you can make the connection for me between being an author, being a writing coach, being a professor, being a fly fisherman or fisherwoman.
Fisherman.
What is the relationship between those?
It's about our story. Our story shows up wherever we go. Um, I can tell a lot about a person when they're fly fishing, when they're casting. I can tell if they're aggressive or if they're being hesitant and taking action in their lives. And in writing, especially when we're writing books, we are taking action to step out in the world with our story that can help other people. And really, our story is in everything we do, whether it's a relationship, it's how we, if we're traveling around the world, how do we prepare for it? Do we approach that with sense of curiosity or dread? Same, are we too aggressive? Are we holding back? It shows up every place.
Okay, so now you talk about preparation. How does one prepare to write a book?
By really thinking about that message. What is it they want to say? A lot of people say, I'm gonna jump in and write a book, and they sit down and they write 100 pages or more, but there isn't a plan. So we really need to have a plan, like who is our audience? Who's that one person that we want to reach? And even though we may be thinking about one person, we will reach more, but it's really important to have an idea of our ideal reader. It's important to know what we're going to share with that idea, what that reader's pain is or problem, and how we're going to solve that problem.
So when we look at that and you say, well, we have one reader in mind and we're speaking to that one reader or we're writing for that one reader, what about that potential author that says, my book is for everyone? That message is for everyone. What do you say to that person?
It's like using a shotgun rather than a bow and arrow to go hunting. It's fishing, since that's my metaphor, or using a cast net rather than using a fly rod to go after fish. We may cast out a big net, but we're really going to be more effective if we think about that one person. I often coach my writers to imagine sitting across the table and having a cup of coffee with a friend or a glass of wine or whatever, and just telling our story, speaking our message like that. It's less daunting that way.
Okay, awesome. So in looking at it, there is, I think it's detrimental to think my message is for everyone. I think then the message is so convoluted, nobody really is interested in reading it. The next step, though, is how are you going to deliver the message to that person? What are those steps that you put together to do that? When somebody brings you a book, for instance, we had talked about this, they bring you a 100-page manuscript, they say, here's the book. What do you go and you do to help them to really take those words on paper and make them alive like a book should be?
Okay, well, most of the time, if somebody brings me a manuscript that's already complete, it takes some dismantling of it to really find the message in there and to help them find their authentic voice as well. A lot of times, authors who bring me a complete manuscript are a little too much in their head when they're writing it. It's like because they're trying to reach a daunting audience rather than really focusing on their ideal reader or audience, making it smaller audience. So I prefer to start at the ground level with my authors. It's like building a house. You really have to have a blueprint first. And the same thing with building a book. We need to sketch out the message, how the expert, meaning the author, delivers their message, and go from there.
So, why is it important for entrepreneurs and business owners to write books?
Well, there's several reasons. One, it establishes them as an expert in their field. Two, they have a product that they can sell on their website or in the back of the room when they're speaking. But I think the third is the most important, and that's it establishes trust with the audience, with the person who may be intrigued with what they have to say, but want to know more. For instance, and I shared with you earlier, is that I've trained with Jack Canfield for almost 4 years now. However, I read the Success Principles first, and that was 3 years before I even stepped into his training room. And so by reading his book, I got to know more about him. Then I went to the websites and started getting, the mailings and stuff. And I really felt like I knew who he was before I stepped in the room. And I had pretty much had a 90% decision that he was going to be my next mentor. But without the Success Principles, I would not have walked into the room and spent, thousands of dollars on training with him.
Interesting that you should mention that, because when I did Train the Trainer with Jack, this is the first time. The first time I went, because it's a series of meetings. The first meeting, he asked how many people of that 100+ people had been to other events, and less than 50%. And then he asked how the people that hadn't been to other events got involved, and it was the book.
Right.
So that book accounted for probably 60% of the people in the room whom he had never met. They had never had personal contact with him, had never been to another event, and it was through the book that they decided to take the plunge of that, that's the big program that he has. And they dove right in just through the book, which I find really interesting. So the book really does.
Most people.
I'm sorry?
I think that's the way with most anybody who jumps into more expensive programs, no matter who the trainer is. We always want that peek behind the curtain, and the book gives us the peek behind the curtain.
Exactly. I've been reading Brian Tracy's material for, I'm not even going to tell you how long. And recently I had an opportunity to meet Brian, but all of these years I've been reading and consuming and watching and all of his material and learning from him and developing my own personal relationship with him without ever knowing him. So it makes a huge difference. So what do you think, going back to the fly fishing, when you can tell if somebody's aggressive the way they cast, or you can tell different things about them, what about the way people write? Can you tell about them in other areas of their life?
Yeah, most of the time, my authors come to me and they're holding back. They're not speaking to the message completely. They're not being transparent. And I think that's really, really important when we're writing a message book, is that we need to reveal our stories. We need to reveal our vulnerabilities. And most of us go around rather protected most of the time. I kind of worked through most of that, and I've been called a courageous writer because I will speak my story, share it. And because I've been willing to do that, my audience is more willing to reach out to me and trust me. And so that's what I encourage my writers to do, is to be authentic, be transparent, and be willing to develop a relationship with their readers that involves trust.
Wow, that's interesting. So tell us a little bit about your secret weapon that you have that helps writers over, writer's block, and helps them to be more authentic and bring more of themselves to their story.
Okay, that's called the RIM method. I'm a master facilitator at the RIM method. And I wished I'd had this, when I started writing 25 years ago, but I didn't. I had to muscle my way through all of my fears. Most authors go through this period of, who am I to write this book? I don't know what I'm saying. People are going to think I'm stupid. What are they, what is my family going to say? And they freeze and they don't sit at the computer. So the RIM method is a mind-body technique that uses our imagination to go in and tackle those blocks. And it really dissolves them and then gets people into action.
Wow, that's fascinating. So is that something that is pretty quick, or is that something that takes a long time for that to sort of settle in and work?
It's fast.
Fast?
During my writing, during the programs that coaching program I use for writers, I schedule a RIM session and it lasts anywhere between 30 minutes and 90, depending on what's going on. And the effects are immediate. They feel better, the anxiety's gone, and they get into action and start writing.
So for someone who's never heard about RIM, can you give us a little bit of an insight into what it is?
It's basically using our imagination to go back and rework, usually an early childhood experience where someone made us feel like we're not good enough or that we were stupid, something like that. So we actually use our imagination to speak out on our own behalf. And then from there, we use tools like a movie to see our lives play out when we're more empowered and see, future steps, that kind of thing.
Wow, it sounds really fascinating. It sounds like it doesn't only help writers, it sounds like it can help anyone.
It does help anyone. I've worked with people who have post-traumatic stress syndrome from either war experiences or, abusive situations. And also weight loss. Works with people who've been trying to lose weight and they just can't. They do the diet thing and the exercise thing, but they're still holding on to those extra pounds. And it often turns out to be a protective measure from some earlier experience.
Absolutely.
I had one woman.
Go ahead.
I had one woman lose 15 pounds in 3 weeks after one session.
Wow, that's amazing. That is amazing. Yeah, so that sounds great. So for an entrepreneur who's not really a writer, doesn't consider themselves a writer, but they want to get their message out there, they want to get a book, what is the best way that they can go about doing that? Because they're busy. They're wearing a lot of hats. They're taking care of many different things within their company, plus driving their company forward, plus actually doing the day-to-day. How can they go about doing this in a way that doesn't, that it's not just another chore?
Well, I think they first need to make the decision that it's important. And it really is, from what it is an introduction to a wider audience. So first, the decision to make that it is important. Second is to build in, it doesn't need to take a lot of time. If somebody sets aside 30 minutes to an hour a day, that's it's just a little reflective time. And it actually helps them clarify their message. And I've seen programs develop out of, writing a book. Like, we'll suddenly see wow, you could use this to, make a CD or a DVD program or a webinar. So it really expands that. Now, Most of the time, people can knock out a book in 6 months if they're disciplined and willing to show up. They're they can set aside a week and, you know, knock it out like that. You know, it still needs editing and things like that, but there's always that feedback process. But it doesn't need to be a daunting, laborious project that interferes with everything else.
Well, that's awesome because most people are really concerned that that's going to be something that's going to be just like all consuming. They're not going to be able to run their business. They're not going to be able to do anything. What I found is a lot of entrepreneurs, after they have, you know, 15, 20, 25 years in their business, they'd really like to transition into consulting, into training, into even coaching. So how would a book be a foundation for that?
Well, it takes and establishes them as an expert in, you know, they can share their lessons, share their process, and they can also use that book as kind of a calling card to send out to human resource people, conference people, you know, in order to move into that consultant speaking training field.
That I think is that's really a great great advantage to be able to say, okay, here's my book, you know, maybe back of room sales, things like that. The other thing that I really like about it is really it solidifies ideas. So all those ideas that are out there that entrepreneurs might not be conscious of how they got to where they are, the steps that they take, then they consolidate everything and they have it right there. So it becomes much more solid.
Right, exactly.
And then from there, they can create their training programs, their speaking, all the different things. But it's really important. And you know, the other thing I notice about writing is the book may take 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, whatever. But at the end of that, you really have something that you hold in your hand. And the products that would come from that come very easily.
Right.
Often, if somebody tries to create the products without the book, the process is a lot more time consuming, not as solid. The products really don't come out as well. So I think of that book almost as the vault from which everything else emerges.
Right. So not only does it solidify their ideas, it really brings clarity to what they do know and provides clarity on how they can share it, the different platforms from which they can share their message.
So that's awesome. The next question I have is how do you actually work with somebody? I mean, do you meet with them one-on-one? Do you know, how do you go about doing that?
A variety of different ways. I use Skype and the phone. So we do one-on-one, and I also do group process as well. Most of my clients right now, we do one-on-one once a week. I give them assignments. They send them to me prior to our meeting. I review them, send comments back, and then we review the previous assignment and talk about the next step.
So there's a lot of accountability involved.
That's the only way a book gets written. I have my own accountability.
Okay, so the accountability is really one of the keys to it. Another one, let me just recap. Another one of the keys is to actually figure out who your market is, what your message is, and what you want to offer that message. Mm-hmm. So what other things go into it? What else is in the mix?
A lot of personal development, because people do grow a lot when they're writing their story. They become more confident in the wisdom that they've accumulated over a number of years and all their life experiences. And it's really neat to see that. It's really nice to partner with my writers when they're doing that too.
So you consider yourself that you partner with the writer on the birth of the book, like a midwife, right?
Yeah, really, a midwife. I'm right there in the birthing process.
It's awesome.
I jokingly say I should figure out how to charge extra for the middle of the night downloads that I get to wake me up, and I have to get up and write notes to myself about a certain client book.
Well, that's awesome. So tell us a little bit about maybe about your books, because I know you have
Okay.
several books out, and then you also have quite a few magazine articles and things like that. So tell us about
Yeah.
how did you get involved with doing this?
Okay, well, I had to come over a big obstacle. When I was in high school, I was entering high school, and my guidance counselor said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" You know? And I said, "I want to be a writer, and I'm interested in the theater." And he said, "You'll never be a writer." And he didn't even address the theater. So it didn't, yeah, I know. It was, I've since come to think of him as, the weight that I've used to build my writing muscle. It did not take me long. When I was in college, I was in a creative writing class, and my professors just said, "You just need to keep writing more of these stories." And before long, I kind of summoned the courage to write an article and send it to a local arts paper. I was raised in upstate New York, so it was very artsy culture where all the New York City people would come for the weekends to kind of hang out. Um, so that started my magazine writing career. The editor came back and said, "I can't use that piece, but would you be willing to write personality profiles?" So I've had the pleasure of interviewing a lot of interesting people: Christian Northrup, Larry Dossey, Kermit Love, who created Snuffleupagus and Oscar the Grouch, Anita Roddick, the founder of the Body Shop. And from there, by building my portfolio, I went into book publishing. So I was an editor at both freelance and on staff at different publishing houses. And then partnered, ghost wrote with a few authors and started writing my own books. So the fly fishing book that I wrote was On the Mother Lagoon, Fly Fishing and the Spiritual Journey. And that came out around 10 years ago. And then I did some academic study into the power of story, how our stories actually help other people heal, which is why I'm so passionate about working with writers who want to write a transformational story or really help people grow. And I'm just getting ready to publish The Whispered Teachings of Grandmother Trout, which is a novel, a women's coming of age novel. And I'm working on a book right now called Women, Money, and Their Inner Male Connection.
Wow, that sounds fascinating. So now I know everybody is curious about this. Tell us your take on the difference between traditional publishing and self-publishing.
Okay, with traditional publishing, you have to have an audience, and it has to be, you have to have numbers behind you before even an agent will look at it. And you need that because you've got to be able to demonstrate that you can make sales. It takes a long time, and with a good platform of tens of thousands on your mailing list or through your strategic partners. So if you have a book or a book proposal, right now, you probably wouldn't see a product for at least 2 years. And that's providing it was, your agent was successful in selling it within the next months. With self-publishing, or hybrid publishing, as it's called, or collaborative publishing, you could probably have a product out within 6 to 8 months of if it started right now. And then you'd have your calling card, your golden business card, ready to be at the top of your funnel so you can draw more people into your audience quicker.
Okay, so what are the perils of self-publishing?
The perils are not getting expert advice. I've seen a lot of self-published books out there that haven't been edited, haven't been produced by quality graphic designer for both the interior and the cover, and that's really key. Especially when somebody goes into a bookstore or scans Amazon, that cover's got to be a attention grabber. And then the interior layout has to be eye-catching and consistent and not just thrown together. Because if something looks like it's just thrown together, credibility is lost and why bother writing?
Exactly, exactly. So I think that the important thing is to still give it the same detail that a traditional publisher would give it through the editing, the proofreading, the professional layout, the professional cover, all of the ingredients that make up a good book.
That's
And
right.
I think that people um, want to do it more quickly, less expensively, but have,
Right.
that they figure, well, it doesn't really matter anyway, but I'll just put this out there. And in reality, that's really a bad idea.
It really is. I know that when I'm reading different literature, if I see kind of shoddy work, I don't even want to. I won't even go any further.
Well, you don't
And
trust
you
the
know what? And
person.
right,
You don't
right,
trust them. Your trust for them diminishes with each time that they kind of fail the reader. Misspellings, punctuation, the cover off, the layout.
right,
Each time it's like they keep going lower. It's sinking. They're sinking.
right, right. And I've been writing for what, 25 years now. I have a team behind me. I have my editor, my copy editor, my proofreader. I wouldn't, because after a while you can't see your own writing. It's like your brain knows what you want to put there. And so we kind of gloss over it. So even professionals have a team.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. They always
And
say
then
that.
there's the marketing.
And then there's the marketing, which is a completely different show. So, really
Right.
quickly, can you give me just 3 tips that a wannabe author or a budding author could use to write their book?
Sure. The 3 tips are: identify your audience. Absolutely essential. Who's the main person that you speak to? And that's usually someone like yourself and someone who's had the same problems or challenges that you've had. The second is to really sit down and make out a plan. And what is it I want to share? What problems have I overcome? And what are my solutions? And then the third is really, ask for help. Success is a team effort.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for being on the show today. I really learned a lot from you. I got so much great advice. I'm sure the audience did as well. So thank you so much, Kathy. It was wonderful.
Thank you, Lori.
Now I know
You
why
take-
they call you the adventure coach. That's fascinating. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So thank you so much for tuning in to Focus Forward today. I hope you enjoyed the show as much as I enjoyed the interview. I think it was wonderful. And entrepreneurs, get out there and write your book, but do get the help that you need to make it a success.